In the first 10 seconds, the galaxy learned fear, not from destruction, but from silence. 500 warships entered a forgotten star system, weapons ready, shields raised, crews confident. 5 seconds later, every ship was powerless. No explosions. No screams. Just quiet. That was the day humans arrived. The Varelian Dominion had ruled known space for nearly 8,000 years. Its borders stretched so wide that even its own historians argued about where it truly began and ended. Entire species were born, lived, and died under Dominion rule without ever seeing a free sky. The Dominion believed order came from control, and control came from fear. At the center of that vast power sat the High Throne, occupied by Supreme Executor Kala Threx. He was ancient, even by Varelian standards. His body was supported by living machines, his thoughts sharpened by neural engines older than most stars. He did not question victory. Victory was assumed. On the outer edge of Dominion territory, far from the grand fleets and ceremonial worlds, Fleet Marshal Owain Valcor commanded the exploration cruiser Iron Decree. Valcor was not old, not young, but experienced enough to trust his instincts. His assignment was routine: survey abandoned regions, catalog resources, and remove any minor resistance. That routine shattered when a junior archivist uncovered a corrupted data fragment during a routine system scan. The fragment was ancient, older than the Dominion itself. It contained only a few intact lines. Sol system. Status: sealed. Threat classification: existential. Directive: do not engage. Valcor stared at the words longer than he should have. The Dominion did not seal systems. It conquered them. Even black hole clusters and unstable galaxies were claimed, studied, exploited. Fear had no place in Dominion doctrine. He forwarded the fragment to Central Command. The response came back within minutes, laughter disguised as protocol. Outdated data, the analysts said. Probably myth, said the historians. If something dangerous existed there, it would already be gone, said the admirals. Still, curiosity won. A scout force was approved. 500 warships. Enough to crush a rebellion. Enough to burn a planet. More than enough for a ghost story hidden behind corrupted files. Fleet Marshal Valcor was given command. The journey took months. The target system lay beyond normal trade routes, wrapped inside a massive red nebula that bent light and swallowed signals. As the fleet approached, sensors failed in strange ways. Time stamps drifted. Long-range scans returned impossible readings. This nebula isn't natural, said Science Director Helene. Its density is uniform. Precise. Engineered. Valcor felt unease ripple through his crew. He silenced it with authority. Fear spread faster than truth. The fleet entered the nebula. Inside, there was nothing. No stars. No signals. Only deep crimson clouds and absolute isolation. Each ship lost contact with the others, drifting blind through red darkness. Valcor had never felt space feel so closed. Then, suddenly, they emerged. What waited beyond stole breath from every living being aboard the fleet. A yellow star burned ahead, but it was caged. Not orbited. Not mined. Caged. A colossal structure surrounded the star completely, a seamless shell of metal, light, and unknown matter. It captured every particle of energy the star produced. Power on a scale that made even Dominion megastructures look primitive. Silence filled every command deck. Before anyone could speak, new contacts appeared. They did not warp in. They did not decloak. They were simply there. Thousands of ships. Dark, smooth, and elegant. No visible weapons. No engine glow. Each one larger than the Dominion's greatest battleships. They moved as if space itself carried them willingly. The Dominion fleet was surrounded. A signal cut through every channel at once. No encryption delay. No translation lag. Every screen showed the same image. A human. Soft skin. 2 eyes. Dark hair pulled back. No armor. No visible implants. She looked fragile. Ordinary. She spoke calmly. You have entered Terran-controlled space. State your intent. Valkor straightened. Shock faded into pride. The Dominion did not bow to unknowns. This system is now claimed by the Varelian Dominion, he declared. You will surrender all assets and submit to compliance, or be erased. The human did not react. She simply watched. That silence felt heavier than any threat. Valkor raised his hand. Fire. 500 warships unleashed devastation. Energy beams capable of slicing moons. Missiles carrying collapsing singularities. Weapons refined over millennia of conquest. None of them landed. Beams curved away as if space rejected them. Missiles froze, then unraveled into harmless particles. Gravity weapons failed as if gravity itself refused the command. Before Valkor could speak, his ship shuddered once. Then everything stopped. Lights died. Engines vanished. Weapons went silent. Control panels turned dark. Only life support remained, humming quietly, mercilessly. Across the fleet, the same fate unfolded. Total disablement. Time elapsed. 4.3 seconds. The human appeared again. Intent recorded, she said evenly. You will remain where you are. Terran Council review pending. The screen went dark. Valkor stood frozen, staring at the caged star and the silent ships around him. He had commanded fleets. He had burned worlds. He had never felt small. Now he did. Weeks passed. No one aged. No one starved. No one slept. The crews were held in perfect stasis, aware, conscious, unable to move. Watched but untouched. Valkor had time to think. He thought of conquered species. Of chains disguised as order. Of silence mistaken for peace. Far away, deep within the Dominion's core, Supreme Executor Caelethrex received the report. 500 ships lost. No battle. No wreckage. Just gone. His response was immediate. Prepare the Grand Convergence Fleet, he ordered. All sectors. Full force. Millions of ships began to move. The galaxy braced for war. And behind a red nebula, humanity watched calmly, ready not just to defend itself, but to decide the fate of an empire. The galaxy trembled long before the first shot was fired. Star lanes clogged with metal. Ancient shipyards screamed back to life. Signals echoed across space as the Varelian Dominion gathered the greatest war fleet ever assembled. This was not a response driven by fear. It was pride demanding obedience. The Grand Convergence Fleet formed over the throne world of Virex Prime. Nearly 2 million warships aligned in perfect order, their hulls glowing with weapons capable of ending suns. Generations of admirals stood on their bridges believing one thing without doubt: nothing in the universe could stand against this force. Supreme Executor Caelethrex watched from the high throne. His voice echoed through every command channel. Erase the sealed system. Leave nothing. Let the galaxy remember what defiance costs. The fleet jumped as one. Across the stars, observers noticed something strange. No panic. No desperate broadcasts. The Terran system did not reinforce its borders. It did not evacuate. It did not hide. It waited. Behind the crimson veil, humanity prepared, not with haste, but with precision. On the blue world of Astrea, one of humanity's core worlds, the Terran Council convened beneath a sky crossed by orbital rings and moving habitats. Humans of every origin stood together, scientists, engineers, diplomats, soldiers. Not rulers by blood or fear, but representatives chosen for wisdom and restraint. At the center stood strategist Elian Rowe, a man known not for his victories in war, but for the conflicts he had prevented. He spoke softly, yet every voice in the chamber fell silent. The Dominion believes power is measured by how much you can destroy, he said. We learned long ago that survival depends on how much you can understand. He gestured, and a projection filled the hall, millions of Dominion ships advancing. We could erase them, Elian continued. But destruction teaches nothing. Today, we choose something harder. Above the council chamber, Terran fleets moved, not to form walls, but patterns. Vast arrays unfolded across space, invisible to conventional sensors. Structures older than the Dominion's empire activated silently. These were not weapons. They were systems. As the Grand Convergence fleet entered the Crimson Veil, chaos began immediately. Navigation collapsed. Quantum beacons returned false positions. Ships appeared light-years from where they should be. The disciplined order of the Dominion fractured within minutes. Admirals shouted commands. Engineers worked desperately. "This nebula is reacting," one officer reported. "It's not gas, it's adaptive matter." The truth was worse. The Crimson Veil was not a barrier. It was a test. As Dominion ships pushed forward, Terran systems analyzed them, every reactor fluctuation, every command hierarchy, every tactical doctrine. Artificial intelligences that had been humanity's partners for centuries learned at speeds no organic mind could match. Then the Terrans acted. Space itself seemed to shift. Entire sections of the Dominion fleet lost power, not violently, but gently. One moment engines burned bright. The next, silence. Ships drifted intact, crews unharmed, helpless. Panic spread. Shields failing across all sectors. Weapons offline. Command, we can't. One by one, voices vanished. Not destroyed. Contained. Supreme Executor Threx watched in disbelief as reports flooded in. Millions of ships were being disabled without a single explosion. "This is impossible," he hissed. Then the Terrans spoke. The signal did not target a fleet. It targeted the Empire. Every Dominion world. Every public screen. Every command node. Billions of beings saw the same image. A human man this time. Calm. Unarmed. Standing beneath an open sky. "I am Ambassador Jonah Mirek, speaking on behalf of humanity," he said. "You know us only as a sealed threat. Let us explain why." Images followed. Not propaganda. History. Human wars. Burning cities. Starving children. A planet poisoned by its own progress. Civilizations collapsing under greed and fear. Humanity on the brink of extinction, not once, but many times. "We were not born superior," Jonah continued. "We survived because we learned." The images changed. Global unity. Shared science. Artificial intelligence treated as partners, not tools. Energy systems built to heal planets, not strip them. Weapons redesigned into defenses, then into deterrence, then into safeguards. "We built walls not to hide," Jonah said, "but to ensure that when we emerged, we would not become what once nearly destroyed us." On the throne world, silence gripped the High Court. Jonah's voice hardened, not with anger, but resolve. "For centuries, you enslaved. You erased. You believed fear was order. Today, your fleets are disabled. Your weapons neutralized. Your empire stands because we allow it to." A pause. "You have a choice." The message ended. Across Dominion space, chains cracked, not physically, but mentally. Slaves watched their masters powerless. Governors realized their fleets were gone. Entire systems tasted hope for the first time. Fleet Marshal Valcor, still held within Terran control, felt something unfamiliar. Relief. He understood now. The ancient warning had not been about danger. It had been about mercy. Supreme Executor Threx rose from the obsidian throne for the first time in centuries. Rage warred with something deeper, fear not of death, but of irrelevance. "Prepare retaliation protocols," he ordered weakly. There were none left. The galaxy had not fallen to humanity. It had been outgrown. And humanity was not finished speaking. The silence that followed the Terran broadcast was heavier than any weapon. Across Dominion space, billions waited, for orders that did not come, for punishment that never arrived, for a future no one had been allowed to imagine. Supreme Executor Kayla Threx stood alone in the high throne chamber. The living machines that supported his body adjusted, sensing his rising stress. For the first time since his ascension, the neural engines feeding him certainty produced only doubt. The Terrans had not attacked his worlds. They had not shattered his cities. They had not even killed his fleets. They had simply stopped him. Reports continued to arrive, each more humiliating than the last. Entire armadas floating powerless but intact. Weapons that refused to fire. Command codes overridden by systems that anticipated every possible response before it was given. The Dominion had built its identity on strength. And strength had failed. Far from the throne world, on the mining planet Karos 9, a slave named Iril stood in a tunnel that had consumed her species for generations. She felt the vibration before she understood it. The shock collars around the workers' necks went dark. The overseer's weapons shut down mid-command. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Iril lifted her head and saw something she had never seen before. Guards stepping back. Machines silent. Fear shifting sides. Across thousands of worlds, similar moments unfolded. Chains remained, but the force behind them was gone. The Dominion's rule had not been destroyed, it had been hollowed out. Behind the crimson veil, humanity watched all of it. In the Terran Council chamber, tension replaced celebration. Strategist Elian Rowe knew this moment was more dangerous than any battle. Victory without wisdom could turn into tyranny faster than any conquest. "We have broken their weapons," one council member said. "We should dismantle the Empire completely." "And become judges over a galaxy that didn't choose us," another replied. Elian raised his hand. "We didn't come this far to replace one empire with another," he said. "The question isn't what we can do. It's what we should do." Humanity's greatest strength had never been technology. It was memory. They remembered what power without restraint had done to Earth. They remembered how easy it was to justify cruelty when survival felt threatened. They remembered how close they had come to erasing themselves. That memory guided their next move. A second transmission was prepared, this one not to rulers, but to the people living under Dominion control. Ambassador Jonah Mirek appeared again, but this time the background was different. Not stars. Not war rooms. Homes. "We are not your saviors," Jonah said. "We will not rule you. We will not decide your future." Images followed, Terran cities rebuilt after disaster, councils arguing openly, mistakes admitted instead of buried. "We will give you something the Dominion never did," he continued. "A chance." Terran systems unlocked. Information flooded across the galaxy. Technologies for clean energy. Medical systems that extended life without exploitation. Communication networks immune to centralized control. Not gifts. Tools. "Your worlds may choose independence," Jonah said. "Or unity. Or something entirely new. Humanity will defend that choice, but we will not dictate it." On the throne world, panic erupted. Governors lost authority overnight. Military commanders found their crews questioning orders. Slaves refused to kneel. Entire species began organizing themselves for the first time in recorded history. Supreme Executor Threx slammed his fist against the arm of the throne. "They are turning my empire against itself," he roared. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. It had always been fragile. Fleet Marshal Owen Valcor watched these events unfold from his disabled ship. Terran observers had restored limited movement, allowing him to walk, to eat, to think freely. A human officer escorted him to a viewing platform overlooking the caged star. "Why didn't you destroy us?" Valcor asked quietly. The officer considered the question. "Because you'd only learn how to hate us," she said. "We wanted you to learn something harder." Valcor stared at the star, at the structure harvesting its power without harming it. "Restraint," he said. The officer nodded. Back on Virex Prime, Supreme Executor Threx faced a final reality. His empire still existed in name, but not in function. Without fleets, without fear, without obedience, the throne was just a chair. For the first time, he opened a channel, this one not broadcast, but personal. "I demand negotiations," he said. The Terrans responded instantly. Jonah Mirek appeared, not triumphant, not mocking. "Then sit," Jonah said. Not as an emperor. As a representative. The words struck harder than any weapon. Threx hesitated. Then, slowly, painfully, he rose from the obsidian throne. Across the galaxy, something shifted. Not the fall of an empire. The end of inevitability. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had changed the rules by which power existed. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant. Negotiations did not take place on a throne world or a Terran capital. They happened in neutral space, inside a vast structure that had once been part of humanity's early expansion, a ring station built for cooperation, not dominance. Its walls were transparent, showing stars instead of symbols of power. Supreme Executor Kayla Threx arrived without ceremony. The living machines that once elevated him were gone. He walked on his own legs now, slowly, carefully. For the first time in centuries, no fleet followed his command. No guards announced his presence. He was simply another being entering a room. Across from him stood the Terran delegation. Ambassador Jonah Mirek sat at the center. Strategist Elian Rowe stood nearby, hands clasped behind his back. Around them were humans of many backgrounds, scientists, ethicists, military officers, historians. No single leader. No crown. Threx noticed that immediately. "You hide your ruler," he said. Jonah shook his head. "We don't have one." The words unsettled Threx more than the loss of his fleets. The talks began not with demands, but with questions. How did the Dominion begin? Elian asked. Threx hesitated, then answered. With survival. We were once hunted. Weak. We united because we had to. Jonah nodded. So were we. The similarities disturbed Threx. He had spent his life believing the Dominion was unique, destined to rule because it had endured. But here stood another species, one that had endured without becoming what the Dominion had. Humanity did not accuse. They presented records. Histories of worlds erased. Species reduced to labor. Cultures broken because obedience was easier than understanding. We are not here to punish the past, Jonah said. We are here to prevent the future. The terms were simple and devastating. The Dominion would dissolve its centralized authority. No more enforced hierarchy. No more universal obedience. Worlds would govern themselves. Species would choose representation freely. Terran systems would remain active, not as rulers, but as safeguards. Any attempt to rebuild the empire through force would be stopped. Threx listened in silence. You leave us with nothing, he said finally. Elian met his gaze. We leave you with everything you took from others. Choice. Far away, across the former Dominion, change spread faster than anyone expected. On Karos 9, Iril stood beneath an open sky for the first time. The mines were quiet. The overseers gone. Terran engineers worked alongside former slaves, teaching, not commanding. On trade worlds, old governors were voted out. Some were arrested. Some fled. Some stayed and tried to adapt. Not all welcomed the change. There were riots. Power struggles. Old grudges exploded into violence. Humanity did not intervene everywhere. They helped where asked. They defended where necessary. They refused to impose solutions. That restraint was tested again and again. A faction of Dominion loyalists launched a desperate attack on a newly freed system, using hidden weapons caches. Terran defenses activated instantly, disabling the attackers without loss of life. The message was clear. Freedom would be protected. Revenge would not. Fleet Marshal Owen Valcor found himself standing before a Terran Council chamber weeks later. Not as a prisoner, but as a witness. You commanded conquest, Elian said. Why are you here? Valcor answered honestly. Because I believed strength justified everything. And because I was wrong. He had seen what humanity could do, and what it refused to do. I want to help rebuild, Valcor said. Not as a ruler. As a student. Humanity accepted. Not because he was useful. Because he was willing to change. Supreme Executor Threx returned to Virex Prime a different being. The Obsidian Throne remained, untouched. He did not sit on it again. Instead, he addressed his people publicly. The Dominion was built on fear, he said. And fear made us strong, but it also made us blind. Some listened. Some did not. But the speech was not about persuasion. It was about permission, to let go of a lie that had ruled them for generations. Months passed. Then years. The galaxy did not become peaceful overnight. It became honest. Conflicts still happened. Borders still shifted. But empires no longer rose unchecked. Humanity stayed where it was, behind the Crimson Veil, which slowly faded as its purpose ended. Terran ships traveled openly now, not as conquerors, but as explorers and mediators. Children across dozens of species learned a new history. Not one of domination, but of a day when an empire fell, not to fire, but to restraint. And in that quiet victory, the galaxy learned a dangerous truth. Power did not belong to the strongest. It belonged to the wisest. Years after the fall of the Dominion, historians would argue about the exact moment the galaxy truly changed. Some would say it was when the Grand Convergence fleet was silenced without a single shot. Others would say it was when Supreme Executor Kayla Threx stepped away from the Obsidian Throne. But most agreed on one truth. The galaxy changed the moment humanity chose restraint over revenge. The Crimson Veil no longer burned red. Its engineered particles had dispersed slowly, carefully dismantled by the same Terran systems that once maintained it. Where secrecy had once existed, open space now welcomed travelers from dozens of species. Human ships were a common sight, but never dominant. They traveled in small groups, often unarmed, carrying diplomats, engineers, teachers, and historians. Wherever they went, they listened more than they spoke. On the world once known as Virex Prime, the former heart of the Dominion, the Obsidian Throne Hall had been transformed. The throne still stood, preserved as a reminder, but it was surrounded now by open forums, learning centers, and cultural archives from hundreds of species. Supreme Executor Kayla Threx walked those halls as a citizen, not a ruler. Age had caught up with him. Without the throne's machines, his life was finite. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be equal. He often met with Fleet Marshal Owain Valcor, who had chosen to remain on Virex Prime as part of the Planetary Reconstruction Council. Valcor no longer wore a uniform. Instead, he wore simple clothing and carried a data slate filled with schedules, resource plans, and community votes. "We spent centuries conquering," Valcor said one day, "watching children of multiple species play beneath the open sky. And we never learned how to live together." Threx nodded slowly. "We were afraid that if we stopped controlling, we would collapse." Valcor glanced at him. And instead, Threx allowed himself a quiet, bitter smile. "We finally began." Across the galaxy, stories like theirs multiplied. On Karos 9, Iril stood before a council made up of former slaves, engineers, and traders. She had been chosen to represent her people, not because of power, but because she remembered suffering and refused to recreate it. "We will not build our future on what was done to us," she said. "We will build it on what we choose to become." Terran observers watched from a distance, offering advice only when asked. Their greatest achievement was not technology, but trust. Humanity itself changed through the process. For centuries, they had prepared in isolation, always expecting an external threat. Now, as they opened fully to the galaxy, humans faced a different challenge, remaining humble when everyone else called them saviors. The Terran Council met again on Astrea, not to discuss war, but legacy. "We must be careful," strategist Elian Rowe warned. "Influence can become domination without intention." Ambassador Jonah Mirek agreed. "The galaxy doesn't need us to lead it. It needs us to remind it that no one should." New Terran laws were passed, not expanding power, but limiting it. Safeguard systems were redesigned to require multi-species oversight. Artificial intelligences, humanity's oldest allies, were given equal authority in preventing abuse. Humanity chose to bind itself. That choice echoed louder than any victory. Decades later, explorers would discover ruins of extinct civilizations, victims of the old dominion. Memorials were built, not by Terrans alone, but by the galaxy together. Names once erased were spoken again. Children grew up learning a different kind of HFY story. Not one where humans dominated the stars, but one where humans proved something unexpected, that strength without wisdom was fragile, and wisdom without mercy was hollow. Fleet Marshal Valcor, now old by his species standards, stood one last time before the caged star in the Sol system. The structure still harvested energy, but now powered networks shared freely across dozens of worlds. A Terran child asked him once, "Why didn't you fight us harder?" Valcor thought for a long moment before answering. "Because you didn't come to win," he said. "You came to end the need for winning." The child smiled, not fully understanding, but someday they would. High above, ships of every design crossed paths peacefully. No single empire. No inevitable rulers. Just choices. Humanity watched the stars not as conquerors, but as caretakers of a hard-earned lesson, one written in silence, restraint, and courage. The day humans arrived, an empire fell. But more importantly, a galaxy rose.